What took me back a little bit was, although it was just a 3 or 4 day evolution, getting lost in the mountains, not having your cell phone, watching individuals experience that level of emotion and accomplishment with it, reconnecting with themselves. I don't think you'd see that anywhere else.
I'm certain there are other places, but not so fast and so strongly. And I've seen it so many times rock climbing with people who just don't believe that they can do it. They say, I could never climb. And we're kind of sneaky. We're like, no, we'll throw a harness on just in case. And why don't you just tie in, see what happens? Why don't you climb a little bit? And they get a little bit up and they say, okay, let me down. I'm like, no, you can go a little bit further. And just through that kind of supportive coaching, they all of a sudden are at the top. And that, it lights me up to see how they light up. If this is possible, what else is possible? I think it's incredible. And that can be a 30-minute experience.
Hi, and welcome to Athena Talks, where today we get to talk about getting outdoors on your leadership journey and intentionally getting uncomfortable. And there's no better folks to have that conversation with than the wonderful Knight Campbell and Tyler Van Horn, two military veterans that have come together and are managing partners at Cairn Leadership. Knight, I think we'll start with you and a little bit of your background since you brought Cairn to life. Knight Campbell is a Navy veteran, grew up at the Naval Academy, turned into a Navy pilot, doing 3 deployments and a tour at the Naval Academy where their Cairn concept was born. And he realized, and I'm speaking for you, so you can correct me, but he realized his true passion in life was getting leaders, teams outside, getting them uncomfortable and helping them navigate their leadership journey in the outdoors.
That's pretty accurate. You make it sound like it was clean and easy and they just had that epiphany one day. It was a long and weird process that maybe we're still in, but yes, yeah. Pretty accurate.
Well, you make it look pretty easy. But I've got to say, though, the best fun fact about you is that you're married to a Marine turned Navy orthopedic surgeon, right?
Yep. The day she was supposed to put on major in the Marine Corps, she put on ensign in the Navy. And I told her she only had to stand up the first time I walked into the room because I was still in 04 in the Navy, and the joke didn't land. We'll just leave it at that. Yeah,
I'm sure. You just welcomed your third baby.
Yes, I did.
And you're looking pretty good for having a newborn at home. So thank you for being here and with us today.
Happy to be here.
Now, this isn't something you see every day, that you have a Naval Academy grad that actively seeks out an Army West Point grad to be their business partner, but that's what happened between Knight and Tyler. Tyler, another distinguished military career that started at West Point, who later became an Army Green Beret with 12 combat deployments, 7 of those deployments with Delta Force. Also, the proud father of 3. So I think you just set that trend, and Knight just had to catch up with his third. So through those experiences, also very passionate about leadership and helping people get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Tyler, I've got to talk about your fun fact that I discovered in prepping for this. So you were once auctioned off for a charity.
Yeah. Charity asked if I'd be willing to, have lunch with one of their benefactors if it went for a certain amount at their auction. Sure, I'll go get lunch in New York City and talk to somebody. It never met the minimum threshold, though. It kind of made me sad. I should have sold it harder or something.
Well, I don't know. When you read your bio, it's a pretty intimidating bio. So it's probably more of an intimidation factor than a fair market value factor.
I mean, I would have pitched in if I'd known about this.
Well, here you are both navigating the journey of building a leadership company together. Before we dive into what Cairn is all about and what you're doing there, I think it's really important that we center the conversation on leadership in general, right? It's so easy. Everybody talks about leadership, what it is. There's a million books out there. I think something that I learned to appreciate over my professional career is that leadership is really a journey. I think it's probably safe to say that both of your leadership journeys started at a very young age, the day that you stepped foot on your respective military academies. Knight, we'll just start with you. Like, what did that leadership journey look like? And before we talk about your transition into the civilian leadership world, just specifically with your military experience and a complex leadership growth journey that you had.
Ooh, how many parts do we have on this episode?
As
That's a
many as you want.
big question, Katie. I think you're right in saying it's a journey. I'm ironically in a PhD in leadership right now. And one of the first classes we talked about how we don't know what leadership is. And people even theorize that it's not even a thing, which was frustrating because I think for all three of us on that journey, we've seen it. It is out there. It does work. I think I've ranged from, at the Naval Academy being a squad leader to a company XO. I think the thing that really resonated with me was being a team captain for the karate team.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have guessed that.
That's actually where I met my wonderful Marine wife. Arguments were a little bit weird when we were back doing karate, but it's still, like, frankly, I don't know. I can't give you a succinct, this is exactly what leadership is. I think I know the difference between leadership and management now. I think I did a lot of things accidentally right back then, and I do a lot of things accidentally wrong right now. I think you're constantly learning, and things that maybe worked back then don't work now, or vice versa. Where I'm landing now as a father, a business owner, a friend, a husband, it's really about connecting people. It's about building community in whatever capacity. It doesn't mean you're the chief of the village type thing. It's you're the dust particle that creates the raindrop more so. And it's about doing things that people are inspired to do. And that may be a good thing. It may be a bad thing. Sometimes people lead in the wrong direction, but it's like, if people aren't going in the direction that you're going, I think then you're not leading. So it's probably a convoluted and existential answer to a simple question. Tyler will clear it all up for us.
Yeah, that's all the more reason why it's a journey, right? Like, there's no set answer.
Yes.
Set experience. Tyler, you had a unique military experience. I mean, how would you describe your military journey, or if there was just one defining complex leadership moment that made you grow the most?
So, like, heading into the military academy to West Point there, like, I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into. Like, growing up in the middle of Seattle, there's not a whole lot of recruiters like banging down the doors at the high schools, and like, I didn't know you could join the Army, but somebody along the way had told me, like, hey, you should go do this. It might work well for you. As I'm looking at these service academies, I don't know where I saw the quote, or somebody told me that, like, hey, at Navy, they've got statues of boats. At the Air Force Academy, they got statues of planes. And at West Point, they have statues of people. Now, the sea and air domains are very important to our national security and do require a great deal of technical expertise and leadership for sure. But whatever it was about that, like, hey, at West Point, they got statues of people. That's what, like, really stuck out to me. It's like, yeah, I want to work with people. I also probably didn't have, like, the SAT scores to get into the Naval Academy or Air Force, but that was the start of it. Now, like, I wasn't quite sure what it meant, but my career was really defined by working with very small, very highly trained teams, people that were generally selected for their individual competence. And then it's on the leaders to then build a team from those, like, very highly talented, very skilled, dedicated folks. And some folks say, like, well, that's, like, easy leadership. Like, you don't have to worry about it. I'm like, well, sometimes it's more challenging working with, when, oh my gosh, these guys know so much more than I do. At one point, my troop sergeant major, so, like, the right-hand man leading our troop of 20 or so folks, he had been my ranger instructor 15 years earlier when I was a young lieutenant. Like, that's the kind of, like, out experience that I was, and, like, trying to find, okay, I'm in a leadership role, but what does leadership mean when you can't just tell somebody, like, what to do, because they're going to look at you cross-eyed if it's wrong. So, like, learning how to really build, like, bring skills together and bring personalities and capabilities together to accomplish a mission. Much like what Knight said, it's not always like, hey, get in line behind me and I'll show you where to go. I think probably the biggest challenge for me, though, was when I moved up to a a director of operations role for a task force of like 250 people or so, like kind of small in the, military scheme of things, but really cool mission. But at this point, I had a team of like 12 folks in the operations directorate, but I'd always been used to being like the one doing the thing from like an officer standpoint, writing the situation reports, that kind of stuff. And, that my NCOs are like out there doing the thing. And now I'm having to mentor officers and get them to do the thing that I had been doing my entire career. And I just floundered in terms of like that organizational leadership, because it was so hard to figure out how to delegate the things that I was used to doing. Very easy to delegate the things that like, oh, that's like not the thing that I would do. I'm going to hand that off. And like roles are generally pretty well defined in the military. But when it's like, no, this is the thing that I do, and I have to hand that off to someone else, was incredibly difficult for me. Like, I can't say that I figured it out in that role.
It sounds a lot like transitioning from a small unit leader that can easily delegate to like just a coaching model, right? And giving people decision-making space, building that trust, letting them figure out how they're going to do it, and having their back. And I never really appreciated as leaders how important it was to be that coach until I actually got in the commander seat. I had the honor of commanding MWSS 471, which was as a reserve commander across 3 states, 500 Marines, both active and reservists, no O5 active duty counterpart. And it was really similar when you're not co-located with your subordinate leaders and those that have to execute the day-to-day, really trying to figure out, well, how are you going to get these things done, knowing it's going to be done very differently than what you may have been accustomed to doing it. And for me, that was just an incredible journey in terms of getting into a coach's seat and learning how to communicate effectively. I think so many people fire off emails, text messages now, but learning that as a leader, you've got to take that time to have those one-on-one conversations. And some days it would be like 5 hours of just one-on-one talks of helping people get comfortable with their own decision-making space. And I can appreciate where you're coming from for sure. Although it wasn't a high-speed task force, so Lord only knows what you guys were up to and doing in the sake and name of national security. So thank you for that. If anybody has spent any time in the leadership space, right, we've all heard of Angela Duckworth. I love her. We watched her grip video on repeat when I was in command. I love it. I think it really touches home and it recenters you, at least me, when I listen to it. But something that she is known for saying is that if you're never able to tolerate a little bit of pain and discomfort, you're never going to get better. And I feel that's kind of what the Cairn model is all about. And over the years, you've worked with so many individual business leaders and team leaders. And, how do you use your model, leverage the outdoors to really intentionally get people uncomfortable? And then what does that look like on the backside? How do you really see that growth that happens? So why is it so important to get uncomfortable?
Yeah, well, like I'll just put out that there's a special space outside your comfort zone and before your I'm going to lose it zone where like, the growth rings start expanding, right?
Yeah.
And I think something that's super exciting about what we do is, well, like one, calibrating that to whomever we're working with. For some folks, like, hey, we're going to do 2 miles backpacking across Catalina Island and then 2 days of sea kayaking. And, that's really what's going to take to like get our team outside of our comfort zone. For other folks, it's like a walk through an arboretum and just shifting the context in which you relate to each other is, it may be hard to call that like arduous, but it's still outside your comfort zone. And I think that challenge is really where the magic happens.
Yeah, I love discomfort, and it's almost comfortable for me. Like Tyler and I are meeting to determine whether or not he wanted to do this uncomfortable thing of starting a business was hiking up to Mount Whitney to try to climb it in 10-degree weather. I don't know why either of us thought that was a good idea, but it was fun. So it's almost like it's not even uncomfortable. I'm excited about being uncomfortable at some level. More and more over the years, I think it's more about attention than discomfort. It's such a precious resource, and we are so burdened by our phones and all of the things that we do. And leadership responsibilities and home responsibilities and distractions that we just don't have any attention. So the discomfort of being outdoors, there's absolutely growth in that, and being uncomfortable and being forced to reflect some. It also just gets your attention. You're like, whoa, this is uncomfortable. I need to pay attention here. Coupled with likely you don't have cell phone service, and likely you're around a bunch of other people who are fascinating. Most people are at some level. And so you start talking because there's nothing else to do. And then you realize, well, Tyler's actually a cool guy, like cool enough to get auctioned off. And I had no idea. And so like discomfort's part of it, but really it's like we make you pay attention for a couple hours, a couple days, whatever it is. And that's invaluable.
Yeah, and having been on one of your cruxes, Knight, and you would see this a lot in the military, so it wasn't uncommon when you would push through a crucible or a tough event, emotional reaction that comes on the backside of that. And I think what took me back a little bit was, although it was just, a 3 or 4 day evolution, getting lost in the mountains, not having your cell phone, watching individuals experience that level of emotion and accomplishment with it, reconnecting with themselves. I don't think you'd see that anywhere else.
I'm certain there are other places, but not so fast and so strongly. And it doesn't even, we had 3 days. I've seen it so many times rock climbing with people who just don't believe that they can do it. They say, I could never climb. And we're kind of sneaky. We're like, oh, we'll throw a harness on just in case. And why don't you just tie in, see what happens? Why don't you climb a little bit? And they get a little bit up and they say, okay, let me down. I'm like, no, you can go a little bit further. And just through that kind of supportive coaching, they all of a sudden are at the top. And that, like, it lights me up to see how they light up of, wow, like if this is possible, what else is possible? I think it's incredible. And that can be a 30-minute experience.
And that's something that I really appreciate about the organization, and it's specifically our guides, is this cadre of folks that we have along this ride with us who are such amazing facilitators, have real world leadership experience, and they're able to translate that to someone else to get them at that right space outside their comfort zone and doing it in a way that's accessible. And it's something that just impresses me every time I get to work with our guides, like how good they are at facilitating that experience, and then the conversations and the learning and the transference that go with it.
Yeah, because really what's behind that discomfort is opening yourself up to possible failure, right? And that's what the whole military training pipeline is, I came to that revelation like halfway through TBS. I'm like, oh, wait, we're supposed to fail and recover from that failure. So I think there's also elements of that. People go into what you do and they're like, there's no way I can do this. I'm not in shape. How can I? And they are forced in that uncontrolled environment to come face to face with potential failure, and then they push through it. I think that's pretty exciting. And then the confidence that builds. So I'm sure, and maybe you can say this is true or not, but what that does is then it builds confidence, right? People that were so scared to rock climb, all of a sudden they rock climb and they go back to their job the next week. And I'm sure they approach the harder decisions or problem sets with much more confidence.
I actually did a research project in my PhD program interviewing people. That was the natural outcome, right? But
right.
People would say things like, there's this moment in Joshua Tree on the second day where this person was belaying me, and I realized how hard it is for me to trust people.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. That was 3 years ago. The fact that people can recall these moments and powerful lessons with such clarity, like this is the person who was belaying me. This is what they were wearing. This is what we talked about afterward. And there are these little lessons like that. And I gravitate toward rock climbing because I love it. And I think it packs more of a punch more quickly. Like you come to a lot of the same things over backpacking. Like I realize I can count on other people. Like I don't have to do it, nor is it even good for the team for me to do everything by myself. Mm-hmm. One CEO was moving out of the business that she had started potentially and deciding whether she should go to another business. And in rock climbing, you have to shift your weight completely to the next step to succeed. And she was really struggling with this move. And one of our guides gave her that advice, like, hey, you have to shift all the way, like all your weight onto that foot or it won't stick. And she's like, oh, yeah, I have to choose. I can't be in the middle here between these two options. And she did and was successful. So you see those pretty concrete, actionable lessons layered in with the more obvious and broad, like I have more confidence or I feel better about myself.
Yeah, it does turn into like a mini therapy session. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of details of people and their lives. You both have had the opportunity, though, and especially as a facilitator and a guide, to sit back and objectively look at these business teams that are coming out and trying to navigate whatever crux you're putting them through, whatever outdoor crux you're putting them through. What are some common just leadership trends and things that you see that people are really struggling with on their leadership journey, whether that's in a team dynamic and how your cruxes help them push through that, or just the common just individual leadership challenges people are having?
Yeah, I think some of it is taking some of the like kind of broader nebulous concepts that you hear, or maybe you see a HBR article on, like psychological safety, emotional intelligence, kind of these like big, uh, um, like you could probably have to call it a domain because there's so much different research in different directions going in, say the field of emotional intelligence, but breaking that down from, like what really is that to like clearly defining it and clearly defining the skills that go along with it. So it's not just like a touchy feely kind of thing. It's like, what are the skills that it takes to have self-awareness, to be able to demonstrate empathy for others? And so it's that, for me, it's that like going from conceptual kind of nebulous terms to very concrete skills that like you can put that into practice on Monday when you get back in the office. And it's not just like, oh, I learned about emotional intelligence. Like I learned how to do this thing that helps my team perform better.
Yeah, one of the many things I love about this transition as a organization that we've made from working with individuals coming together on an adventure to working with full teams is we now do a lot of work with the team. We interview everybody. We do qualitative data analysis. We do a survey. We do quantitative data analysis. And we don't come in kind of saying, oh, we're going to talk about communication and practice. We come in saying like, hey, you're at risk of burnout. We hear about it. Here are 5 quotes from your team that talk about that. Here's where your culture could counter that. Like you're passionate about what you do. Here are some of the risk factors that go into that. Let's work on some explicit norms of how do you take requests or deny requests? What do you say if the boss says like, I need you to do this and you can't, you literally don't have time? How do you support someone else who's in over their head and you have extra time? What does that conversation look like? And the crux is really a microcosm. Like we create this environment, this container where if people talk over each other on the team and it creates a lack of psychological safety because you feel like you're just going to be interrupted anyway, our facilitators will notice and point it out like, hey, Knight's talking over Tyler all the time. What's that about? You all said in your interviews that you want to get better at psychological safety. That's a clear red flag to us. What could you do about it? What do you want to do on Monday? How are you going to address this next month? How can we reach out in 3 months and see if it's working and give you some pointers? So there's this kind of through line that is just really fun for us, that we can actually help people develop norms and skills that move their businesses forward.
So you do like a command climate survey before they ever get there?
Basically, yeah, you can put it that way. It's way better than the command climate survey. But
Yeah. Well, and it's because it's not just filling the bubbles. It's like
Right.
we're going to have a phone call as well and talk about these things.
That in itself, especially those that haven't grown up in the military pipeline and used to command climate surveys and just constant feedback loop, how are business leaders responding to that? Because you doing that is probably the first time somebody has objectively come in and been like, here's your team's feedback. This is where you're at. Like, how has that gone?
good question. I'd say most of the leaders have been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
They have weaknesses and strengths like all of us. And most of the people at the level that we're working with are pretty self-aware. They're not often like, oh my gosh, they said that I'm not doing a good job at this. Like they're kind of like, okay, yeah, it's good to know that they see that and I'm working on it. Can you help me?
I've seen the highest performing leaders and teams have been the most receptive to feedback, and they are the ones that are like, oh my God, thank you for pointing that out. Or like at one point on a beach in Catalina Island, we just sea kayaked all day. I was trying to describe something that had happened, and that one of the team members just stopped me. He's like, "Hey, just say it. Like we can take it. We want the direct feedback." So it's like that idea of moving from like high performance to higher performance. And I think folks that are in that space really appreciate feedback, especially if it's legitimate and it's not just like a hand wave. It's direct behavior, and you can point to a direct skill that can apply to change that behavior.
Mm-hmm. Well, Knight, you mentioned you changed your business model going from an individual focus to a team focus. Why is that? And then what does that look like? I let's say I have a small team. There's like 6 of us I want to bring out. How do I do that? What does a crux look like?
What it looks like, we do that discovery phase. We interview everyone. I'd say also they're all confidential, and I'm consistently shocked by how forthright people are in a very good way. It's not like oh, I don't like so and so, but it's like, yeah, we could be better at this, and then we can pull those strings as interviewers. We can say like, oh, well, Tyler said this. Is that true? How do you experience that? And then other people, it's not like a question of if it exists. It's like, oh, yeah, that does exist. And here's how I experience it. So then we get with you and we say, here's what we see. Is this right? Is this what we should be working on? And 90% of the time people say yes. Sometimes people say, nope, we're about to change everything. We need to focus on change management and give people tools to cope with that. Because all these things that everybody's mad about are going to change in 2 weeks or whatever it is. We design the curriculum. We figure out where to go. Tyler kind of alluded to it. Like we want to titrate the discomfort. So sometimes that means a walk in an arboretum in the winter, and that's radically uncomfortable for people. Sometimes it means climbing a glaciated peak on rope teams. Like it's somewhere in between. We go canoeing, or sometimes it means we're camping in tents. Sometimes we're in yurts. Sometimes we're in an Airbnb in a nice cabin. All of those feel kind of the same. There's like, for those people, they're just as uncomfortable as someone else in a different situation due to experience or whatever it is. And then we do the adventure. We facilitate these conversations. We write everything down. We then send you a report. Here's what we saw. Here's what we did and talked about. Here's what you committed to as a leader, as a team. And then we do coaching on the back end. So we do a coaching session with each person. Usually it's something like you saying, hey, I committed to doing this, and here's how it's going, and here's where I could use help. Often people just say, no, there's this other thing on my mind and I need coaching about that. And so we do that. And then with the best clients, that becomes a process. Like we do that once a year with the executive team, but maybe we take your managers out for a day long climbing or hiking event to talk about and build the skills and knowledge around these concepts. So everybody's on the same page. Maybe we do spot coaching with key people or as people promote in the organization. So we're really about building leadership capacity for our clients. We want our clients to be able to have the skills and knowledge and behaviors to get to the next level to scale as organizations.
And I don't want to gloss over curriculum, because you have been very intentional the last several years in building kind of what that looks like. And so when you do the discovery calls and you realize whether it's communication or trust building or whatever the case may be, can you just kind of talk through like what actually some of those curriculums are to give people a better understanding of that? Because they're so thoughtful and so deliberate.
Something I think is interesting about our curriculum development, and this part of a function of working with a PhD candidate, and part of a function of working with Knight, who's just literally genuinely curious about all these different topics, is you don't get to read an article or listen to a podcast and think you know what you're talking about. Like we have resource guides and guide primers that we've put together for our guides that will have several books, several academic articles, several different podcasts about a topic to make sure that we understand it from many different perspectives. We understand counter perspectives, so like if you are out with us and we do wind up talking about psychological safety or emotional intelligence is a great example. You will also hear us bring up articles that say emotional intelligence is junk and that it is not helpful and that it can be actually harmful to an organization if you have too much empathy, say. And so you will hear those counter perspectives as well. There isn't any canned, hey, here's our 5-step process. Everything is continually learning. It's addressing like counter arguments and asking folks, how does that land for you? Would that even work for you? And hearing them say, no, I don't think so. And this is why. And I think that leads to some really fascinating growth where it's not just, hey, I followed this 5-step process and now I'm certified in the Cairn Leadership way type thing.
I'm sure there's some reservation of people reaching out and saying, hey, we love this concept, but whether there's physical limitations or just general, like I haven't been in shape in a decade, how do you overcome that? And how are these cruxes still available to all?
I know Tyler has stories of taking people ice climbing, and I want him to share that. But one thing that I say often that really lands for leaders is when we have those conversations, the HR executive, the CEO, whoever we're talking to says, well, Katy can't rock climb.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, what else have you decided she can't do?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, yeah, I don't know. Because I've seen 300-pound people backpack 18 miles with thousands of feet of elevation gain. I've seen, 300-pound people backpack across Catalina. I've seen 50, 60-year-old men who have never rock climbed before work for 45 minutes to get up a route and just inspire the heck out of their teams, watching them like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this person had that. They didn't know they had that. So I always push back, like, what do you actually, like, how do you know that Katy can't rock climb? Because I bet she can. But then, yeah, Tyler, I think you've had experience like with people doing things that we don't think they can do.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to work with a phenomenal organization, Paradox Sports, that it works with differently abled folks specifically in the climbing world. But like we go ice climbing in Lake Placid with paraplegics, like double and triple amputees, things like that. That's like, hey, you know what you can do? Like an awful lot if you really want to, if you really put your mind to it. And I think it's also important to say that this isn't for everybody. And, there are folks that are going to say like, hey, that just doesn't speak to me. And that's okay. We strongly believe that putting yourself in the outdoors, getting uncomfortable, and doing it with folks that are phenomenal facilitators, like that phrase of titrating the discomfort just right is where you can make it accessible. And I think we have a team coming up where one of the members, like as doctor has recommended, like, no, you shouldn't participate. And that's an exciting challenge for like, okay, so how can we include that person as part of the team? Like, I think that just makes the lessons even stronger. Even intellectually, we all have different abilities or perspectives on how we approach things, and figuring out how to bring all of those capabilities together to maximize the team's potential is really what we're trying to do. Like, we're not trying to make people rock climbers. We're trying to get people to see the potential of their team and learn how to like bring that all together.
Yeah, well, with that potential, I mean, another thing we talked about a little bit that Angela Duckworth talks a lot about is grit. As she would say, is the number one determiner of success is how gritty you are. What do you guys think? Can you teach grit? Have you seen it be born on these trips?
I mean, we both have kids, so hopefully you can teach grit. When you dig into the research, you're going to get geeky on Angela Duckworth. Like, grit is passion and perseverance. So you can't teach passion, but you can teach to make things interesting. Like, I had a chemistry professor at the Naval Academy who fascinated me in chemistry. I was passionate about that subject. I then had another professor who turned all that off, and I became an English major. So I think we, as Cairn Leadership, as leaders, as people in organizations, we can make success and teamwork interesting so that we can create passion for the purpose. We can articulate the purpose well to create passion. And then perseverance, also there are tools, right? You can pull that string, and like people can't persevere if they don't sleep because of their infant. Fortunately, that's a finite thing, right? But if you're burning your team out, like they're not going to persevere. They're going to run out of gas at some point. And so they can't have grit because they don't have perseverance anymore. So you can build on passion, you can build on perseverance, and I think build habits of grit. But if you just say like, I'm going to help make you grittier, like people are going to roll their eyes and be like, okay, Knight. That's my kindergartner does that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tyler, what do you think?
I think it's often a matter of exposure. Like as we've been saying, folks often have way more inside of them than like even they know. But often they may know it and their colleagues don't because it's never been exposed, or folks haven't had the opportunity to demonstrate that either to themselves or to their mates. So I think that level of exposure is a really important component of grit. Just like the chemistry professor, if you hadn't been exposed in that way, never would have had that passion for it. So that's kind of a key component to me. I think as we continue the conversation, I definitely have other thoughts about Angela Duckworth and grit.
She formed the whole idea at the military academy, right? Yeah.
Good ideas or bad ideas?
Like I challenge it a little bit. Yeah. So like one of my favorite books, I imagine we'll probably talk about like favorite books at some point, but I love the author Annie Duke. Mm-hmm. Working on her doctorate at I think either Columbia or Penn, something like that. Dropped out due to illness, became a professional poker player, like world champion many times over the course of 20-year career, and has now gone back to, consulting and writing. She's written some absolutely amazing books about decision making, but also wrote one as a rejoinder specifically to Duckworth's book called Quit. And, so it's like, instead of your level of grittiness, what's your level of quittiness? And some of the discussion there is the ability to iterate and to quickly see that something isn't working and move on to the next thing, rather than just grasping onto it and say like, I cannot quit this. I cannot quit this. But it's, so there's a little bit of an interplay there between the two of them where and Annie Duke would say like, I agree with everything that Angela Duckworth says. And you have to have a bigger perspective than just what is immediately right in front of you. And you have to know when it is time to step away from something. Mm-hmm. Or if you just continually do the wrong thing over and over and over and over again, just because you're persevering through that doesn't mean that you're going to reach positive outcomes or high performance. But like being able to channel that. So like, I think that's just an example of like, hey, there are different perspectives on that, and both are very good and useful for developing yourself as a leader in your team.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like I have the career pivot conversation all the time with the young associates I mentor, and not being scared to make that change just because like the path of least resistance, right? So you have career pivots and business pivots, and Cairn hasn't been just about the time that you're spending with business leaders and teams, but you're also trying to grow and run a business. I think I've been watching you do this for the last decade or so.
Going on that.
Yeah. I mean, talk about like the quitting moments or the pivoting moments, and just kind of going back. Like a perfect thing to start with is why you made the business decision to go from the individual model to the team model, and how as business leaders, you can't be scared to make those pivots.
Yeah. I mean, partly we just did that because it makes business sense. And we're passionate about connecting the business world to the outdoor world, all of the benefits that come with it. When you have open enrollment, you get a lot of people who are like, yeah, thumbs up. I like it outdoors. And that's cool and fun and refreshing. We like taking teams out where 3 of the people are like, why the hell did you sign us up for this? I do not want to rock climb. And for us, it's challenge accepted. And it's not like you're going to like rock climb, like a military boot camp type thing. It's just like, hey, like, come sit with me. This is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful space, and it is good for you. And we want to share that with you. And that's where a lot of our passion, I think Tyler and I, but also all of our guides who spend, they all have full-time jobs leading people in corporations and the military all over. And they come spend their weekends with teams to share this just magnificent place, headspace, almost spiritual. It's not like a spiritual religious, just like this is good, with people who never would have opted in otherwise. And we see a lot of impact. Like you can take a team and you can see over the course of a year, hey, did you fix the things that we talked about? Like yes or no? And if they say yes, like is business better? Are people happier? And they are, like that feels really good that you could do that. Tyler, I'm curious what you think.
I see it as my purpose in life to help people become the best versions of themselves, healing, learning, and growing in the outdoors. And, we really focus on the, learning to growth side of that at Cairn. Self-leadership is a component of leadership, but leadership is incomplete without folks that are working together for a common mission and purpose. One thing to take care of yourself. Good. Got it. How are you going to translate that to helping influence others to accomplish a mission? Even if you aren't the one directly in charge, so there are all of these leadership skills absolutely apply, even if you aren't in that designated leader role, right? So bringing all that together and helping people see like, hey, I am a leader and I can use leadership skills, even though I'm not the team leader or the, business unit director or, or whatever. So democratizing it a little bit.
Yeah, you got to lead yourself before you can lead others.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well, then Knight and Tyler, what have been some of the other just unexpected challenges of building a business? And any advice that you'd have for those that are stepping out there trying to do it?
I got one for you. Like find a mentor. I've been so grateful to have, some in my time since getting out of the military, but Knight's probably sick of hearing this analogy. But the analogy I use is, I know I'm dating myself, but like Danny LaRusso moving from New Jersey to California as the Karate Kid, trying to learn out of a book. And like, sure, good on you for trying to learn and grow. But it's once you find that mentor who's now able to take you on your hero's journey, is such an important piece. So I'm so grateful for the folks that have helped me along the way, continue to support me. And it's those things that I read it in a book, but I just don't get it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And part of our quarterly check-in is who's your mentor, and all of our new fellows from SkillBridge or employees are like, oh, Knight is or Tyler is. And we're like, no, you need to go find the actual mentor. Like we tell you what to do. They will help you build yourself.
Right.
We have a ton of books. I recommend a lot of books on like how to build a business. They have the right answers in them, which is amazing. Like, why is it so hard then? I think having the discipline to do it every day is really hard. And not even that, like that sounds like, oh, you just have to have discipline. It's more so, how do you break things down into like tiny little steps? Like I need to email 3 people once every 2 days or what, like I can do that. Make it something you can do, and then have your business partner or someone else check in with you. And if you do those things, they will add up to success over time. Whereas if you don't do those things and do all the things the business books say and have great ideas and try to implement them, they won't add up, implode under their own weight, and they don't have the foundation of those little actions. Post on LinkedIn once a week, whatever it is that you need in your business. That's hard. It's hard to do.
A little bit about LinkedIn. How do you guys feel about LinkedIn?
I love it. I shamelessly connect with people. So if you reach out and you're like, hey, can you connect me to this person? Like, I probably don't know that person. And like some of my best friends, some of our best guides, I think Tyler and I even just connected on LinkedIn. Like we see each other's profiles and like, oh, this person likes doing hard things. A lot of our guides came from kind of Shackleton-esque ads on LinkedIn, like low pay, really hard work, miserable conditions, come work for us. And people like Tyler shake out of the bushes and you create real relationships. And that's what I love about it. Business networking tool. I don't know. It's probably good for that too. But
yeah, we met on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I've connected to some amazing people on LinkedIn, so I love it.
Yeah, I struggle a little bit more with it, and but you approach it just like everything else we're talking about here. There's a skill involved. 100% what Knight says, just those small things of reaching out, connecting, and building relationships. So great platform. I can't say that it's something that lights, really makes my heart sing. Like, I get it. Like very, very useful tool. And yeah.
The last topic we'll talk about is just the military transition and softening that landing. And, I lead with the LinkedIn piece because I think just naturally military folks don't like being on social media. I mean, I hate it, but I do it. But it's built this amazing community. But I think really getting out there and learning how to navigate LinkedIn and building genuine relationships and a genuine network. I say that a million times over, not just to military folks, but just to young professionals coming up too. I mean, you've got networking right there in your fingertips. That became a big part of my military transition, was getting engaged on LinkedIn. So I'm curious if you guys can just talk through your military transitions and just any advice you have there for those that are getting ready to do it or living through it and just hitting walls, because we all know it's exceptionally hard.
I'll dive in. Mine was during COVID, so that was just an awesome time to be
Oh, even
released out into
better.
the wild. All right, well, like the world's upside down. Nobody really knows what's going on, and everybody's learning how to connect remotely. So you're able to have way more reach than like, well, I have to go to this job fair in person in Washington D.C. or like I'm not going to get hired. Like, well, all that's out the window now. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was how to ask very specific questions. And the like LinkedIn advice. If you're connecting with somebody who's at somewhere, like, hey, can I pick your brain? I think is like a pretty like lazy request. But like, hey, I have questions about this type of role or this type of company, or like those types of questions where you can get much more specific. And it's scary to get specific because you don't know what you don't know. And like, well, like I just need to find things out. But the more specific you can get about your ask, not only will you get better information, but folks will be able to help you out better as well. It's like, hey, I know somebody in Denver that works in, consumer packaged goods at the director level. Let me connect you with them because I think they'd be a great person for you to talk to because of these things that we were able to talk about and the questions you're asking, as opposed to like, well, yeah, like if something comes to mind, I'll keep you in mind. Get specific with your questions as much as you can. I know it's hard, but very, very helpful, not just for you, but for those that are trying to help you as well.
Yeah, but just how was that transition as somebody who spent over 20 years just operating at an extreme level with magnetic teams, right? Because that's a big part of the transition too, is like overnight that tribe is gone, that camaraderie is gone. I mean, how did you, if you did prep for that, or how did you weather that?
Like I probably made it about as painful as possible. I did take advantage of the Skill Bridge program, where like military gives you a chance to go do a internship. Did that at a relatively young startup, so like it's like straight into entrepreneurial world. The first company that I went to work with out of
Mm-hmm.
transition, managing defense contracts for many of the units that I'd served in over my career, but it was still like generally in startup mode or getting close to rapid growth, and they're doing amazing now. But it's still like, hey, we're going to need you to do about 100 different things, not like here's the job. So that was something that was very, very difficult. I imagine going into like pure corporate world, it'll be much more like the military, where you have a job, you have a role, and you might have to do 5 different things, but you're definitely not the one working a sewing machine while you're also trying to balance the books and and then talk to customers or something like that. I'm not sure really what drove me towards that, other than things looked really interesting, and I got some amazing connections with folks, and and that's then transitioned to now like working here with Knight at Cairn, where it's like figuring out code on a website to like how am I going to communicate to folks that like all the way from the ones and zeros to like what is the actual message, trying to figure that out, trying to build a team that can help do that. That has been the hardest part for me and the most unfamiliar for me, where like previously like I like generally knew what my role was with the roles of other folks on my team. The mission we might be doing is just like all over the place, but the roles were generally pretty well defined. That's something that was challenging for me and is still challenging for me, frankly.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you talked a lot about asking good questions, which is really important, but I also think boundaries and knowing what you're willing to do and not do. And I do think it's an entertaining story when you first connected with Knight, explaining, just the sales world was just off limits.
I'm not going to do business development. And like accepting that, like, hey, guess what? Like, you're going to have to at some point, even if it's just having knowing how to have a conversation about what you do and why it's important.
Yeah.
That, like, buckle up, because like, even if you're not like, like, okay, I'm the business development director, but being able to talk to people and tell your story and talk about why what we're doing is meaningful, is an important skill to have. And I think that would generally fall in like the business development world. Those are the folks that are definitely iterating on it over and over and over again.
I think Tyler, something I saw him do well in his transition, because like you mentioned, we met early on, and he had no interest in being a partner at Cairn Leadership. I don't even know if that was a thing yet at Cairn Leadership. Obviously, I didn't know him well enough to want to bring him on as a partner. And he was like, hey, I don't like BD. I did that. I hate it. And he also was like, I'm figuring things out. Like, I'm going to go do a Knowles course. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. He's like, yeah, but I'm going to do it anyway, which is kind of like a common theme here. Usually he's right-ish, at least. But he went and explored a bunch of things, which I think we don't give ourselves space to do that. Sometimes you can't. You have a young family and you just have to get a job, but you can still explore on the side. We're so used to the military saying like, okay, cool, I see your preferences. I'm going to give you number 7 on your list, and being good at it. We can do that. We can do just about anything being veterans. We know that. It doesn't mean we should do just about anything. And when you get out, you don't have to. If someone says, here's a great job, we have insecurities and we're like, okay, I guess I'll be a program manager because I can do it. Is that inspiring? Like we talked about grit and passion. That's not a recipe for passion and perseverance over time. Like take the time to explore, do the Knowles course, check out some different options, make sure that you're settling into something that's worth settling into if you at all can, and ask lots of questions. Like I got into a PhD program and looking back, I was terrified. Like I knew I could do it. And also like, geez, I'm just a, Navy helicopter pilot. Like I don't know anything about research and PhDs and all this. If I ask questions, they're going to realize that. And they would have, and they would have saved me 6 months of misery and been like, hey, maybe you should go figure yourself out before you dive into a PhD program right out of the military. It would have been a blessing for them to have figured out that maybe this wasn't the right time for me to do that. And things change. Like here's Tyler, 3-4 years after he said, I will never do business development. Life changes, things change, perspectives change. I'm now in a PhD program and I love it. And I think back, like at this point in my life, I probably would have liked that one too. So being open to like in the military, it's like, well, this is the way it always is, I guess. It's not. It'll change in 6 months, 2 years, whatever.
Well, fair enough. We both have provided a very good example of what success can look like. And, for those that are, running into walls and not quite sure what it looks like, just keep going, build that network. You can do it too. So to end, how would people even get a hold of you? Where do they even go to find out about Cairn?
Yeah, well, we're on LinkedIn. For sure, look us up. We'd be stoked to connect with anyone here that's listening to your podcast, Katy. And cairnleadership.com. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears gone into that website, but that's probably the best way to learn a little bit more about the programs and what we do, and be able to like visualize like this is what it looks like for my team. Reach out for sure. There's a little contact button there on the website.
Excellent. I really appreciate your time and spending it with me today, and always a joy to talk to you too.
Right on. Thanks so much, Katy.
Thank you.
All right. Talk soon.